So we have a lot going on. We have live, we have recording, we have Zoom. So for those of you who are jumping on early, please feel free to join us if you wish to ask a question in person, or I have some questions that we're going to discuss tonight, but certainly if you are interested in coming on board, you can come in person, address us, talk with us. We want to answer those questions, those concerns that you have right now going through a divorce during this incredibly difficult time. So we'll wait a few minutes. We're 11 minutes out, so I do want to wait until 9 o'clock to allow people to come on. I need to also invite folks from the other site as well. Post, okay. So we're here, we're going live. Hello to all of you that are joining us. Glad to see you here. So I do want to wait just a few moments before we start. And I appreciate all of you joining. This is a new technical challenge for us. So we're on Zoom, we're recording, we're live. So there's a lot of technicalities going on. So we'll go through this. And again, if you want to join us in the Zoom room, you can do that and have conversation with us. Now, you do have an opportunity when you come into the Zoom room, you can change your name, rename yourself. So you can either remove your last name or change your name totally. You do have that option with Zoom. For those of you who are familiar somewhat with how Zoom operates, there is that option for you. So we've got about 10 minutes out. And if you don't want to come on live with us in the Zoom room, then you are able certainly to post a question or comment there, and we will certainly address it. I also have about 10 questions here to discuss as well. So we want to be here for you to answer those questions, those relevant questions that you are facing right now. Things are so whacked everywhere. And I've always said to my support groups, I really wish that divorce was the only thing that you had to handle right now. But life goes on. So not only is it the divorce that you're dealing with, you're also dealing with all the other issues, the financial, the emotional, the children. And now we have this other layer on top of us that who could have imagined? And it's happening all so fast that our heads are spinning. Our heads are spinning from the divorce itself. So it's difficult enough. So we've got 9 minutes, so grab you a drink of water or beverage of choice and look forward to having this conversation. And if you do have questions right now and you're not going to join us in person, please feel free to put it down there in the comment box, and I will certainly state that question and get a response to it. So I'm going to be here talking about what I typically do, but joining us in just a few moments is attorney Peter Letzmann, and he's going to address more of the legal. Now, I will tell you, and I need to put the disclaimer out, you'll hear this a few times, we're not giving legal advice tonight. That's not our role. The role really is to work with those who are bewildered by the whole process. That's our role. In fact, I'll be speaking about preparing for mediation, this workbook, which actually is a free download. If you send me your email address, private message me your email address, and I'll send that out to you. And what it's going to do is it's going to help you get started. I was going to give you pages in here on all the things that you need to get together, all of your documentations. You're going to need an appraisal on the home unless you and your soon-to-be former spouse can agree on the price of the home. You're going to need all of those documents together. So what it's going to do is if you're working through this, and again, I'm going to send it to you for free, so let me know if you would like that. And then you're going to gather all of this information and have it ahead of time before you go into your attorney. So your attorneys typically cost an average here in Michigan, $250 an hour. And what typically happens when you go to your attorney is you're going to spend like the first half hour, maybe even hour or longer, talking about all of the emotional aspects of what happened, what your concerns are, and all of the emotional, the things that we really deal with in the support group. So you'll spend about an hour or so doing that with your attorney, and then you're going to spend the next hour or so. She's going to explain, he or she is going to explain to you all of the documentation you need to get together, all these questions. So if you show up with this and you've got it all done, then it is a place to start, and it's a lot of your work is already finished. So my goal here is to be a support for you in any which way I can. I am a domestic mediator, so I understand the mediation process very well. I've been doing it for 8 years, been in the divorce world for 15 years. So I want to help you. I'm not going to give you legal advice, and even our attorney tonight is not going to give you legal advice. But what he is going to do is tell you good questions to ask your attorney, or some thoughts that he has about the whole system, about the court process. It's going to be very, very helpful for you. I hate divorce. God hates divorce. But if you are here, I want you to be supported and helped and ministered to. It's too difficult to go through alone. Too difficult. So I've got some resources back there as well, and I'm going to speak with you about some specials that I have coming up due to the times that we are in. This workbook, again, there's no cost, so just let me email it over to you. I do need your email address. I can't send it through Facebook or one of those sites, and even an email has to go through Dropbox because it's a large document. So, but I want to get that to you. So for those who are not familiar with me, I've got some resources back here that we use. And I hold support groups. We come together 10 weeks. I've been doing them virtually for, I don't know, the last year or so. Little did I know how important they would be right now. That we would get to a point to where really that's the only way to have them offered. So it's doable. It's all doable. And let me encourage you in 4 minutes before we begin that you will get through this process. Don't go through it alone. There's too many mistakes we can make. The decisions we have to make are huge, and they affect the rest of our lives, the rest of our children's lives. So don't go through it alone. It's what I'm here for. So sorry about the glare of the glasses. That is my constant struggle, is working with the glasses. So about 3 minutes. Thank you for your patience. Love to know where you all are from, what state you're from. If you care to, you don't have to. If you don't want to be identified in any way, that's totally fine. So I have anonymous up there. So you have the option of, I really want that support, but I don't want to go into a group of people in my local community who know me. I work with people all over the country. Haven't had anyone yet international. I'm sure that day is coming, but all across the country. And if you rename yourself, then it allows you to get the support you need, and you don't have to worry about that. I work with several pastors, unfortunately, going through this trauma. And for them especially, it's nice that they can go to a place and they can be on first name basis, and they can really get the support that they need in great confidence. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. I'm rambling. I won't ramble too much as we go through this, because again, I want this information, the information that you need. And if you really are fearful of coming into the Zoom room or posting a question there, you can text me a question. I'll be watching all of my devices today, and if you want to text me a question, you can do that. My phone number is 810. In fact, let me put that down here in this comment so all of you can see that. 810-730-6679. So you can text me any questions you have, and they won't appear here. And of course, I won't use your name. There. I'll leave that one up. Yep, there you go. So you can have that. I'll pin that comment so it's up there. So yeah, I have my phone right here. It is turned off, so I can receive any messages. So 1 minute. 1 minute, here we go. My cough drop's about gone. So perfect timing. Now, here we go. It's 9 o'clock. So welcome. Thank you for joining us at Facebook Live Divorce Support Anonymous. A little bit different this time. We're using Zoom. So you have the opportunity to join us in person if you would like to, and ask a question in person that you have about this difficult time, what's happening now that the courts are shut down. We're going to ask some of those questions to our joining attorney. And let me see, I'll switch over here to my Zoom room, sorry. We're going to have attorney Peter Letzmann is going to join us. And let me just start by saying a huge welcome to you. Again, you'll notice in the comments, you can text me a question if you have it and you don't want to be identified. We will address that. But we have joining us today, attorney Peter Letzmann. And I have worked with him for the last 6 years, I think. And we have had mediations together, but he has far more experience than I. I've been doing it for 8 years. He has thousands of cases that he has worked with, so in mediation, and he has an attorney background, so he has a huge amount of understanding on this whole process, and also the court system. So thrilled to have him. So let me just go ahead and have you join us. Please help me welcome attorney Peter Letzmann. Hello there, Peter.
Kathy, thank you for bringing me on. It's a pleasure to perhaps share a little bit of knowledge to a lot of folks out there who probably need or want a lot of knowledge about divorce and these difficult times. So I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, super. And again, let me give that disclaimer that we are not giving legal advice today. We are here as a resource really to help those who are totally unfamiliar with the whole divorce process, the mediation process, the court process. So we want to be available to you to answer those questions. So I do have some questions ahead of time, and we're going to go with these until I hear from any of you out there. Thank you for those who have joined, and there is a group that has joined, so I'm grateful for that. So, Peter, here's the question. The courts are shut down. How does this affect my divorce process?
I hate to be a contrarian, but the courts have not totally shut down. Okay. The courts are still available and are still open for what they have categorized, or at least in Michigan, what they have categorized as emergency matters. For example, if it's a child abuse or a neglect or something that needs immediate attention, the courts are still available to address those issues. So if it's a critical emergency issue, you can contact the clerk and something can be arranged. It'll be a complete different situation or arrangement in the normal court. You may be 6 feet away from everybody else, and you will have hand sanitizers and all of that. But if you do have an emergency problem, the courts are available for you.
Thank you for that clarity, because I don't want people to feel like they have no access to the court system whatsoever.
Yeah, but the normal proceedings, you know, if your divorce is scheduled 3 weeks from now, they will probably adjourn it or probably cancel the hearing or cancel that the motion or whatever you've got going until April, May, June, or so on. Everything is going to slow down, back up, and then of course the courts will be backlogged and clogged, and it's going to be a difficult time for the court system and for you participating in the court system and not being aware of what's going on in the court system.
Mhm. So as far as the timeline, like the 6 months in Michigan, we're going to be referring to Michigan because that's where we are. The 6 months date of the processing of the divorce, that still holds?
Absolutely. The jurisdictional date, if there's 6 months for, if the children are involved, 60 days. If there are no children, those timelines still exist, but I would not be very optimistic that you're going to get into a court within the next 60 days unless there's that emergency.
Right, right. Okay, thank you. So with the new technology, can I do mediations by Zoom or my court proceedings?
Probably not the court proceeding. Perhaps it can. It depends upon the technology that the court has available. And that all is in flux, that all is changing. For example, I didn't think that we would be teaching classes via Zoom, you know, a month ago, and here we are. I just finished a class earlier this afternoon with Zoom. But the new technology for sure, in terms of mediation, will be a tool that will be used. And the plaintiff or the husband may be in front of one computer, at his dining room table. The attorney may be in his office. The mediator may be in her office. The wife's attorney may be in another office, and then the wife may be, you know, somewhere else. So you may have 5 different locations that will all come together on Zoom or GoToMeetings or another platform, whatever everybody agrees on. But the big issue will be, do you agree, like you agree on time and date and location for mediation? Do you agree to do that via Zoom? If everybody agrees, that will be good. As a matter of fact, there's another benefit by doing Zoom. In Michigan, at least, the agreements don't necessarily have to be written and signed by the parties. At the conclusion of the mediation, the mediator, and I frequently do this, will read, are we agreed that the house will be split, the cars go there, the debts go there? And then I ask the attorneys, are you agreed? Husband, are you agreed? Wife, are you agreed? And wife's attorney, are you agreed? And that verbal recording is a binding contract. It's a document that will be enforceable. I should also add there's a technique called depositions, where we interrogate one witness. It could be the husband, could be the wife. Ask the husband, where are your bank accounts? Do you have a hidden villa in Bahama or so on, so that you can ask. Those depositions normally are conducted in one or the other attorney's office. Now, likewise, we don't have to gather, and we didn't have to gather before, but this will become more common practice where we will do virtual depositions or remote depositions. So there are going to be other techniques. So be prepared. Things will be different as we go forward with this technology.
Yeah, great information. Thank you. So tell me this, on a side note here, how many mediations do you think you have completed? And I know you do not only domestic, you do civil rights, you do governmental, you do it all.
Well, I've only been doing this for about 15 years, so I'm sure I'm beyond 1,000.
Yeah.
I don't, I've done so, I used to keep track, and I used to keep track of the ones that settled and didn't settle and so on. I still have a log, but I don't add up the mediations that I do. I use 2 or 3 a week on the normal situation.
Mhm. Right, great. Okay. This is a comment that it's real. I got served yesterday. My divorce papers at work. Now what? We're still living together as a family. What am I supposed to do, or how am I supposed to behave?
Okay, let me take that in reverse order. First of all, you're going to behave like an angel. You're not going to be nasty. You're not going to be vindictive, especially if there are children involved. You're not going to try and punish him. You're going to behave like an angel. You do not, and I'm saying him, it's the generic him, so that the other person does not have any evidence, because they will be accumulating evidence once that, or during this stressful time, to say to the judge or to say to the attorney, look, she's a bum, she did this, and she continues to do that. Do not give the other party any evidence of misbehavior at any place at any time. And especially if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you're going to have to play celibate. You're not going to have to play. You're going to have to separate. My advice, my information that I would give you, that because I don't give advice, but I would share with you, I have seen the fact that this mischief that goes on during the pendency of the divorce is used against one or the other party. That type of information will come back to haunt you. So that would be the first thing that I would do. Get your mindset going. Be like an angel. The other thing that I would suggest to you is get an attorney as quickly as you possibly can, because in normal situations you have 21, 28, depending upon, again, the jurisdiction. You have a short period of time in which that you have to respond to the paperwork, the summons and complaint that you have been served with. So you have to respond, get it to an attorney, and get an answer, or start working on an answer. The other thing that I would suggest to you is have an inventory, or start working on the inventory of your assets and liability. And speaking of inventories, this is Kathy's cue.
I've already talked about it, but for those of you who are not on early, sorry. This I'm going to send to you. If you send me your email address, I'll send it out. This is going to help you prepare all of that documentation that you are needing to take to your attorney.
And I know that Kathy is talking about $250 an hour for a divorce attorney in Western Michigan. That's for a cheap divorce attorney. I think the average is running over $300 an hour. So for some of you, $300 an hour is no big deal, but for most of us, indeed, it's substantial, especially again now with the stock market being down 1/3 and your 401 is now a 201. And start with your inventory immediately. And I would suggest is, to the extent you can, if you have the inventory, you know what the value of the divorce was, of the marital estate at the time of the filing. And if you can in some way, is separate the amount. You know, if you're bringing home a paycheck, stop commingling that paycheck, save that out, but keep track, because you still will be responsible for sharing the money, even though that you may segregate the accounts. And likewise, be alert, is your spouse hiding money, segregating money, and so on. All of the assets and all of the debts which are accumulated during the marital life are divided. So get your arms around that so you know what that amount is. And then the other thing that I think that is very important, and many of the attorneys don't keep that in mind, and really you need to keep that in mind yourself, is think ahead a little bit. At the conclusion of the divorce, well, make sure that you want the divorce. If it, make sure it cannot be saved. I always ask at the beginning of the mediation, is this savable? Can we patch it up? And every once in a while, 1 out of 100 or 200, and somebody says, yeah, we just don't know how to get along together. So we figure out if we can't get along together, we got to get a divorce. Well, there are lots of tools there that can teach you how to get along together. But what I ask you to do, and Kathy's got some tools to help you with that, is where do you want to be at the conclusion of your divorce? And when I say where do you want to be geographically, do you want to stay in the town that you're living in, or do you want to, move out? Do you want to get away from this area? Is it just too many bad dreams, too many bad things like that? So think about that. Financially, where do you want to be? Yes, you share it, but would you rather have the house rather than cash? So take a look at what is your financial plan, and then think about the children. Where would be the best location for the children? Remember that you have parenting time, you have to share with parenting time. But think about it. Where do you want to be after the divorce, 2 years after the divorce, 10 years after the divorce, and start making those long-range plans. Usually when we are in the divorce process, things are just hitting us all over the place, and we're trying to hide and answering the what decisions do I have to make today? Keep in mind as to what are the decisions that have to be made for the long run. And Kathy has some tools to help you with that.
Yeah, and that can be overwhelming for those of you like this individual who just got served papers. Don't let this overwhelm you. Take a deep breath, because we do in the support group, we talk about the emotions and the decisions and the acceptance and the later moving forward, where we start dreaming about and planning a future. But don't let it overwhelm you. I do want to ask you, Peter, because you love 3 points. So to this question, 3 things that this individual, I just got served yesterday, 3 points of what they need to do.
You're asking me?
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody else here, I guess. You're asking me. Number 1, get an attorney, get so on. And after my 3 points, let me address getting an attorney. Take an inventory of the assets and liability. That's point number 2. And point number 3 is have in mind, have a plan, write it out in your journal somewhere, where I want to be at the conclusion of the divorce, and then a couple of years down the line, and then the long term. And the overall umbrella, is that 1, 2, 3? Can I have a 4?
Well, I think for those of you like this individual who's just starting, don't think about planning your future right now, because you're in survival mode and you're in shock and you're in grief. So that can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah. But then let me change that 4 or that 3 and substitute if you insist, substitute the act like an angel during the divorce process. Okay. And show that show your attorney that you're not going to make this punish the other guy. You're not going to make, or the other person, you're not going to make this a battle. This has now, I'm sorry, you have left the realm of emotion. And 90% of this is emotion, but we have left the realm of emotion, and we have gone into the business mode. What is the best business decision? What is the best business outcome that I have? So show that your attorney that you're professional, and you want to make a professional decision, and you're not out to punish the other party. So those are my 3 points.
That's excellent. So excellent. And that's why you need that network of experts, which we talk about in these books and also in the support group. You need those people to advise you. You've never been here before, and your emotions can overrun your decisions. So, yeah, great, great words. I
All
know
right,
we're
Kathy,
probably going long tonight, so if you'll bear with me, we'll continue through these questions, and you can come back and watch the recording later if we're keeping you too long. Yes, Peter.
can I sneak in the question that we have? I know it's somebody called in and asked, how and where do I get an attorney? And
Yes.
I think that's a really high on the priorities.
Mhm.
You, most of us, 99.8% or 144% of us don't know, divorce attorneys don't, we haven't dealt in that realm at all. And, but you have. Half of your friends have been divorced. Statistically in America, 50% of the people have been divorced. And that would be my first suggestion to you is ask around. You have some knowledgeable people who have suffered through divorce, and they can tell you at least this person, this lawyer was good, was reasonably priced, or this lawyer was a jerk or a jerkette and they charged too much and they dragged it out and they didn't answer to the telephone calls. I think the critical thing though in picking an attorney is, are they responsive to your calls or your questions? Now, you can't always have the attorney responding because I can tell you, I'm in court, I'm mediating, so I can't talk to people just at any time. But there's a background. You either have a callback mechanism, an answering machine or whatever, or you have a legal secretary, and explain to your, the attorney should explain to the client, I can't answer immediately, and we are in an immediate society. Now we want an answer now, but I will get back to you before the end of the day. You know, that's my promise to you that I will, before I leave the office, I will answer your emails or your telephone calls or so on. So ask around who has experience with that. And then you can check with the local bar association, your county bar association, your state bar association. They will have a list of attorneys. And there are several publications that rate attorneys. And I'm getting a little bit deep into the weeds here, but if you really want to check your attorney out, Martindale-Hubbell is a publisher that rates attorneys, and the key word is A like Adam, V like Victor. They rate the attorneys with that both in terms of competence and ethics. So take a look at the ethics. And the other place to take a look at is the West publication, the Thomson Reuters publication, Super Lawyers, those people who are listed in Super Lawyers. And both of these groups are peer rated. In other words, what they do is they send questionnaires to other attorneys and say, okay, is this an ethical person? Is he a competent person? And that would be another way of finding out whether you have a qualified person. And finally, I'd like to, remind you that hiring an attorney is like getting a plumber. You get 3 or 4 prices, you get some proposals, you go in and, interview the attorney, have your free 20-minute consultation. And does the chemistry work? Can you work with the attorney? And if you don't, you go look for another one. And I would suggest to you, like buying a car, only, I won't criticize anybody who goes into the dealership and buys the first car from the first dealership that they go to. Take a look, what else is available to you? So shop around for an attorney.
Great, great points. And this is the nuts and bolts. I say it's more like a doctor that you can have that relationship with, where I don't know about a plumber if you have a relationship with, but excellent point, because you are the technical, the law technical. So I love that.
Kathy, going back to one of the things that you frequently advise your listeners is have your group of experts. If you have a counselor, or if you have in your divorce group, if you have an accountant, check with the counselor. Does he or does she have a attorney that she's familiar with? Check with your CPA. Do they have an attorney that they're comfortable dealing with?
Yeah.
And just ask around from your network of supporters.
Yeah, and Peter, you and I are very fortunate to know some really amazing, good attorneys who really genuinely care about their clients, and to work with them in a mediation is just such a gift.
But
And then there's the others.
yeah, I do. That's why I say shop around.
Yeah.
In the mediation, I'm confronted with attorneys who don't prepare, who haven't talked to their clients before the mediation, attorneys who are just running up the bill. We want to avoid that for you. You should not. When you have a marital estate that's worth $100,000 and you've spent $50,000 on attorneys, there's something wrong there.
Yeah, so great words of wisdom. Let me ask this next one. So my ex just informed me that he's probably getting laid off. Do you know how that affects child support?
Yes, it will reduce the child support because the child support is determined on the income of both parties and the overnights, and they have the formula. But I could guarantee you, if you are earning $50,000 a year and all of a sudden you're going down to unemployment or some sort of assistance at $20,000 a year, they what they call is there's a material change of conditions, and the other party can ask the court to adjust the child support. And I think you're going to see a lot of that action again because of the economic conditions. And again, let me caution you, there's going to be a backlog at the friend of the court to determine if they're going to use the friend of the court to determine what the child support is. But just as a escape valve or a safety valve there, you can take that child support issue, get a mediator and say, hey, my income has been reduced from $50,000 to $20,000 a year. This was my old child support. We get the parties together, and perhaps the parties can agree as to what a reasonable child support will be for the short term or for, until the conditions change back.
Awesome. I know I hear it from you when you do mediations, and I do it as well, trying to find the best interest of the children. And that's the hardest part in doing mediations, is the children and what's going to affect them. And so again, behaving in that angelic way, we have to be that protector. And if you go into a mediation room or into a courtroom and trying to punish the other person, many times, like you've stated, it's just not worth it. You're going to hurt the children. You're going to hurt your future. It's just not worth the fight. So
let me just add on that, Kathy, is yes, you will hurt the children. And I'm going through that with a couple of the cases I'm dealing with right now. They're 10 and 13 years old. Those kids are suffering. They tell me, I just wish mom and dad would stop fighting. So you are hurting them in the short run, and you may be doing some irreparable harm to their psyche. But I will tell you that in the long run, when they get to be 30 or 40, they will be able to tell you, you hurt me, and things will sort out, and they will be able to choose who was really the parent who was acting as adult in a parental fashion rather than who was the vindictive or punitive parent.
yeah, absolutely. Great point. And it affects your relationship with them too. So, okay, I recently divorced. We're still living in the same home. My former spouse is sleeping in the basement, but all of his belongings are still in our master bedroom. While the whole world is in quarantine, he still does what he wants and comes and goes between the home and his girlfriends for the night. I'm concerned about what he might be bringing home since he obviously isn't taking the virus seriously. Would I have any legal ramifications if I put all of his belongings in the basement by his bed as to avoid coming upstairs and potentially bringing disease with him? Anything I say or do, he threatens to tell his lawyers. I prefer to stay here and not see or talk to him. However, I'm afraid if I move all his clothing, I might get in trouble. What is your advice?
Remember, we're not giving advice, we're giving information.
This
And
is
my information would be, is to segregate the belongings as quickly as possible that you can. If he is in the basement, move everything down to the basement, box it up, put it in garbage bags or so on, because that he will have them. And when the divorce is final, he won't have to go through the house to look for his cufflinks or his shoes or so on. Everything will be at the foot of the couch or at the foot of the bed where he's sleeping. So that to try and segregate the belongings as quickly as you can, or maybe stick them out in the garage or somewhere so he does not have to come and into the common areas of the house, certainly not into your bedroom. So yes, that is a good suggestion. And tell the lawyer. So what? Let him tell the lawyer. You're still acting as an angel. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not stealing anything from him. You're just segregating. You're helping the divorce process work. So yeah, let him talk. If you're not doing anything wrong, share it with your attorney. Don't be intimidated by the other person saying, "I'm going to tattle on my attorney for you, you know, whatever you do wrong." So don't let them intimidate you on that. The other question you ask is about the virus. And we went through that with on several occasions where the husband was bringing home TDS. Do I have that correct, Kathy?
STD.
STDs or so on. And, you know, you're really bringing a disease into the home. And if he will not cease to or will not undertake the hygiene, the sanitary things that are necessary to do under these conditions, this might become an emergency that you might need to have some sort of court help on that. If there are children involved, for sure, Child Protective Services or the friend of the court can be involved in that. No, you don't have to expose yourself to that. And especially if you have a lawyer, chat with your lawyer about that particular issue. And I would tell you 99% of the lawyers that would be representing the other party would tell that other party, cut the comedy, you know, straighten out and fly right. This is dangerous times. You're just endangering your family.
Mm-hmm.
So you can persuade him that way. Child Protective Services, friend of the court, or a motion in court. And the ultimate thing there that the court would do is just expel him from the house, evict him from the house. That would be a remedy.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know we're running long on time again, but there are a couple questions that I definitely want to get through. One of them is, I'm attending a support group. Should I see a counselor as well? And I will respond to that and say, it's very helpful. In fact, most of the people, like 99% of the people who come to my support groups are also seeing an individual counselor. They complement each other very, very well. The great part about a support group is you get to hear other people articulate your pain, and that has incredible value. So absolutely, yes. The next one, I know this is another favorite area of yours, Peter, is finances. My finances are a wreck. Can you offer some guidance as to how I can survive this? Let me just say, and I know this is your specialty because you instruct Dave Ramsey classes, but let me just say, the more simply you can live right now, the better it's going to be. So, Peter, if you'd respond to that.
Let me build on what you say is stop spending money, period. Stop borrowing money, period. Live on the money that you have, and start now, because you know that when the divorce is final, you will be living on less money. There will be less income at that time than you have now. So start the belt tightening as you have. One of the tragic things that I find in the divorces that I mediate, usually, or not always, but frequently, the husband is in control of the finances. He pays the bills, he brings in the money. You know, he knows where the insurance policies are and where the investments are and so on. It's time that the other party find out about that. You should have a minimum, a financial background, not, you're not a financial wizard, but some basics. And there are tools out there that I would recommend to you. Kathy mentioned Dave Ramsey. I particularly like him. I teach the courses, and he's just got some information, some things you can do that have survived the centuries or the decades. There's Susie Orman that's out, and she really different way, but does the same things that gives you. So get a general advice. Know about insurance. Know about buying and selling a house. Know about investments, basic investments. Know about how to plan for the children's college, if they're going to go to college, or post high school activities. So get that overall, just general information, that you are not naive or unfamiliar with the world of finance. And like I say, you don't have to be a Wall Street trader, but get some general knowledge. I would suggest that you do that. And then the other thing, the thing that we don't do, and again, if Kathy will allow me my three, so general knowledge. The second point I have is have a budget. Find out how much money is coming in, and then spend accordingly and allocate accordingly. See where the money is going.
Are there, Peter, let me ask real quick, are there budget sheets, I'm sure there are, available online for those?
Bazillions. There are a lot of them. Just look out budget forms for, you know, and they're as simple or as complicated as you. Most people have a house. They have the house payment, the car payment, the insurance. They have food. They have clothing, vacation fund, and so that's most people. Not too many people have to worry about the Hatteras yacht that they've got anchored in the Bahamas or so on. That's a different group of folks. And the other thing that I would suggest, I would not suggest, I would admonish, I would encourage, I would coerce you, whatever I can do, is that you, what Ramsey and Orman and all those people call an emergency fund. So that you have, typically in America, if you have a $400 calamity, most people cannot survive that calamity without having to borrow money.
So how would they do that right now? Because
how do you do that?
They're in an emergency.
Well, there's two ways of doing that. One is increasing your income, and the other way is lowering your expenses. And there are no other way. There's no magic formulas of moving this figure into that column. Is you got to get more income and less outgo. And again, all of these things, the confluence of tragedies are all happening to you. And you know, it's mind-boggling. And then Kathy, you know, my hat's off to you for your groups, because you can work with that. You can slow down at the group meetings, and you can separate the issues that are all intertwined, and you can talk about that. But you've got to get your hands around all of that. So you've got to have a cash reserve. For example, if the situation is that you have to move out of the house, do you have a security deposit? Do you have the first month's rent? Do you have, you know, could you carry on with the car payments or so on? You know, we talk about having 3 to 6 months emergency fund. And if there is none now, that's going to be very difficult to take, so to do, but it has to be done. So remember, don't spend and don't go into debt. Get your budget and get an emergency fund as quickly as you possibly can.
And again, folks, this is not to overwhelm you. I know we're covering a lot of territory right now. It's not to overwhelm you. So you don't have to solve everything tonight. That's why the support group, your experts, are going to break this off into doable pieces so you can look at it carefully, intelligently, and make a plan. So I know all of this can be very overwhelming, but stick with it. Keep going. You know, even a snail moving forward is moving forward and making progress. So I don't want anyone to be overwhelmed out there, because I know there's just so much to deal with, and that's why you should never go through it alone. I want to do this last question, and then we'll make sure that we cut it off at 45 minutes, which I appreciate your patience with us. But this next one is, my soon-to-be ex is bashing me to the kids and giving inappropriate detail to my 8 and 12-year-old child. What can I do? I want to respond to that first, and then I know, Peter, that you have thoughts on this. In all of this confusion, we have to take a step back and say, what can I control? Because if we don't do that, we're going to drive ourselves crazy. We cannot control what the other person is doing as much as we want to, as much as we see what they're doing. If you have any type of relationship that you can reason with your former spouse, and you can calmly, and it's really going to be important that you remove all emotion from your voice and state to your soon-to-be former spouse, can we do this without hurting the children? Can we spare them from the detail that is going to hurt them? So that would be wonderful if you could have that communication. But again, we have to ask ourselves the question, and we will ask it frequently during the divorce process. What can I control? I cannot control what happens in the other house. I wish I could. I wish I could protect my babies from it, but I am limited. What can I control, and what choices do I have within that control? I find that is really brings us back to center and keeps us sane through this experience. Peter, thoughts?
Lots of thoughts on that. The first one, again, let me bring you back to mediation. One of the things that I negotiate in the mediation agreements, and sometimes I maybe extend myself more than I should on this, but again, my concern is the best interest of the children. And I put in a paragraph that the parties agree that they will not bash each other, that they will not trash each other, that they will speak neutrally about the other person. And we have a sort of a code of behavior in a paragraph that we have. And I ask both parties, do you disagree to being a civil person to your soon-to-be ex-spouse? And they can't say, no, I'm going to be a jerk and I'm going to do that. So of course they agree that. I ask the other person, can you be civil? And so on. Of course they agree to that. So that paragraph of civility then becomes part of the contract, the mediation contract. And you can put it in as much detail as you want in that mediation or in that civility paragraph that you want. And that may include, you know, the kids, allowing the kids to call mom or call dad during the parenting time. We can be as creative as you possibly can in that. So the contract, the mediation agreement is one tool that you have. If it gets really ugly, you know, you can have an evaluation by the friend of the court. They can take a look at that and evaluate that, and they can take some action there. The other one, of course, if it really, really gets ugly, then Child Protective Services. You know, I've seen cases where the Child Protective Services have taken some severe action on just that topic of what can I say, spouse bashing. And then, you know, the sort of the bottom line of that, if that really goes on too long and with disastrous consequence, especially to the children, there's a thing called alienation of affection, because what the spouse is doing, they're bashing you because they want to have the children, they want all of the affection to come to them, and they want to alienate the affection from you. And if you can demonstrate to the court, there are some remedies that the court will take on that. So think about mediation agreement, Child Protective Services, friend of the court, and then alienation of affection. You would work with your attorney. And while I'm talking, and I have the microphone, Kathy, you can't let me stop before I talk about reasonable cost of divorce. How do you handle it when you don't have money for an attorney?
Yes, thank you. That was one of the questions actually on here. So if you want to go ahead in like 1 minute, if that's possible.
I can't do anything in 1 minute, but
All
I'll
right.
try. There are several vehicles that if it's a relatively straightforward divorce and limited separate, and if you go through mediation, most of those technicalities are remedied. If you in Kent County, Michigan, we have a service at the court where they will provide you with the forms. They will show you how to fill out the forms, and they will not give you legal advice, but they will say, where it says name, they say, put your name there. You know, they'll give you that kind of help on that. And where it says, you know, division of assets, you can say, see attached mediation agreement. So you can do that yourself. There are other ways of doing it. There are a couple publications out there. I'm not selling books or so on, but this one is called The Michigan Divorce Book, a guide to do an uncontested divorce without an attorney. And this book is without minor children. There's another publication that says with minor children. These are about 20 or 25 bucks. They're available on Amazon. And if you're in Michigan, you can use that. And it's really, everybody's familiar with the dummy books, you know, how to, I don't know, do brain surgery for dummies. Well, this is kind of the same thing. It takes you step by step. And if you follow the formula, you should be able to do it. There are similar publications for most of the states in America that allows you to follow that. So do a little research on Mr. Google to find out if you have a manual that's available to you.
But word of caution, if you're doing that, make sure you do have someone. I mean, I've had people who prepare all the mediation. Well, I've done mediations without attorneys. And then I always say, have an attorney review this, because you don't want to make those legal decisions that are going to affect you the rest of your life when you're really not sure what you're doing. So there are ways to do it without being totally dependent upon an attorney.
Let me bring it back to the beginning of the conversation where you said, Kathy, this is not advice, you know, this is information. Mm-hmm. Every divorce, every situation is a little bit different. And the discussion we had today is general discussions. Yours may be, and the uniqueness over there, if you don't have the attorney look at it, you may lose some finances or financially, or you may lose some parenting time, or you know, some spousal support or something. So even the cheapest attorney, if you do the self-help books or go through the court for the self-help, it would be worth the $250 to sit down with an attorney and say, okay, here's everything that I'm going to do. Do you see any pitfalls, or am I stepping on my toe on this or not? Give me your legal advice as to how far I brought that. Now they will try and say, well, I'll finish it up for you for another $1,000 or so on. You're not shopping for that. Don't necessarily do the upsell. Just say, have I covered all of the bases?
Yeah. Thank you, Peter, for spending this time with us and sharing. I know these topics are really deep and we really just skimmed across them. Every topic we brought up today, we could spend 45 minutes alone on that topic. So,
if you want, Kathy, I can always come back. It's lots of fun being on the other side of the mic from you. And with that, I will say good night and good luck to all of the folks who are listening.
Thank you so much, Peter. He is a gem and he is a wealth of information. So we're really fortunate to be able to hear what he has to say to all of you as you go through this troubling time. I just want to be encouraging to you to let you know you will get through this. Keep in mind, if you look too far down the road, it's going to paralyze you and you won't be able to do anything. So that's why we have to break it up into small pieces and deal with it. Deal with it in a support group, deal with it with a counselor, deal with it with your attorney. It's all necessary. But please don't be overwhelmed by the wealth of information that we share during this time together. Just take a deep breath. And we haven't even touched on today the spiritual aspect of it, how vitally important it is that we ask God into this situation to give us the wisdom we need, to give us the discernment. And I'm sorry that I'm leaving the most important part at the end, but it is the most important part. Don't go through this alone. You need spiritual guidance. You need God, the Father of all wisdom, who cares deeply about you. So with that, I appreciate your patience. For those of you who stayed this long, I appreciate you very much. And we look forward to seeing you next Facebook Live. Connect with me if I can do anything for you, be of help in any way. And with that, we will catch up with you next week. Take care, stay safe, be in, watch out for those babies. Good night.